Auburn's roster is set for the spring, but what should fans expect after A-Day? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Rapport. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Auburn Express. Joining me is my good friend, Jacob Goins, host of On the Line Sports Talk on ESPN 106.7. Jacob, thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. There's just there's a lot going on around the world of Auburn athletics. Excited to get into it.
It is a lot going on. The least of which is QB talk on the Plains. Auburn has their quarterback in Jackson Arnold. He projects to be the starter come fall. But there doesn't seem to be much of a QB competition going on the Plains right now with Jackson Arnold taking the job. Deuce Knight will be here for the spring. Ashton Daniels will not join until the summer. Give me your quick thoughts on this QB situation this spring. If you're Deuce Knight, this is probably the best situation you could have hoped for with you being able to take clear QB2 reps, if not some QB1 reps this spring.
Well, that's my thing, Mike, is I think there should be a clear quarterback battle. I think Auburn has fallen into the trap in several recent years where somebody comes in, a quarterback, whether it be a recruit, whether it be a transfer, however you get them, and it's, okay, this is our starter, this is our guy, and let's see if we can have a battle for number two. I think Auburn has to get out of that mindset because it's got Auburn burned the past couple of seasons. You've got Arnold, you have Knight, and then you'll have Daniels, as you mentioned, coming in after the spring. Let's have a quarterback battle. Let's just see who wins, rather than saying, well, we paid Jackson Arnold however many dollars in NIL, and he's the Oklahoma guy. He's the Power 4 guy. He has to, it makes sense for him to be the starter, right? Why not say, let's just see who wins. Let's see who gets the battle. If it's Arnold, great. If Deuce Knight steps up and we feel he's ready to go that route. And heck, if Ashton Daniels steps in and wins the job, then put him out there game one. I feel that Auburn needs to let this thing play out and not make a decision too early, even if it's not a public decision. You know this. I mean, seems like their starter, they know who that's going to be before that becomes public knowledge. So I just think let it play out and let it see how it goes.
You raise an interesting point, but how do you break that cycle of we paid this guy, if the numbers are to be believed, $1.5 million. And so we're stuck with him at quarterback because that money's not coming from nowhere, Jacob. People are donating that money. So if you're the booster that said, you know what, Hugh, here's $1.5 million for your quarterback. Am I wanting to see the guy that I paid 1.5 for on the bench? And does that make the coach beholden again to boosters, which is what we tried to get away from in college football?
It's a great question. And it's something that I think we're going to end up seeing across the board in college athletics, not just football, but college basketball, right? What if you go get that big time point guard and he doesn't work out, or he's got off floor issues, or he's having a horrible shooting slump, or whatever the case may be? That's the issue you're going to start seeing. And fans have to understand, just because you donate X amount of dollars doesn't make you on the staff, doesn't make you an assistant coach, doesn't give you the chance to say this is how the program should be run. But it is a fine line of, I'm the head coach, but I still need your money. And, oh, you paid for this quarterback, but I think this other guy is actually better. I don't know how you decipher that. Whoever can figure out that formula may just be a rich man, Mike, because that is a tough conversation to have. And you'll probably see coaches get fired for it, or at least fan bases turn on those coaches if they don't give the fans what they want.
It's funny that we find ourselves here because they're essentially doing things that you would get the death penalty for 20 years ago. Literally, they would try to shut down your program. We all know what happened. What was Albert Means at Alabama in the early 2000s, late 90s. We saw what happened to SMU. Interesting to watch them make the college football playoff when they were the school that were the poster childs for the NCAA's death penalty. Now, we're freewheeling all of this. So if you're Auburn, like I said, you found yourself in a precarious situation, I think, with NIL, where the dollars are flowing and the NIL support is clearly there. But when millions of dollars are flowing for a single player, it's hard to believe that there isn't some jockeying going on behind the scenes of boosters getting their way or being beholden to those financial commitments that you've made. This spring, Jacob, what do you expect to see? What do you expect to see from Auburn moving forward here? They brought in Eric Singleton, the number 2 player in the portal. You got Horatio Fields. You've got a stacked wide receiver room. And if you're Hugh Freeze, you got to keep everybody happy, man. You've got to get the ball spread around to all these big-time receivers. What do you see here from Auburn this spring, and how do you think they'll manage it?
It's a good problem to have, the fact that Auburn is going to be the most talented roster that they've had in several years, to where talent is no longer an excuse, right? The first couple of years, it was, let me get my guys, let me get my guys, let me get my guys. That's what Hugh Freeze asked us for. And now here we are. I mean, this is a really good roster between high school recruits that are coming in, transfer portal additions that you've made this offseason to supplement what I think were very minimal losses in terms of the impact guys that you lost in the portal. You lost a heavy number of them, but nobody that just makes you go, man, that hurt, right? You feel like you won the transfer portal cycle this in the winter, and then everybody that you bring back from a year ago. And so there is no excuse now for Auburn to not be good and at least better than what they were last year. And so I look for this spring, how do you get those playmakers involved? Who does emerge as the lead receiver in the room? Because KLS is no longer here. And we thought Cam Coleman was going to become that a year ago. It just didn't happen because of how great KLS was. Can Cam Coleman be that? Or will it be Eric Singleton? Or can it be Perry Thompson? Those types of guys on the outside. And then what is the pecking order in the running back rotation? We believe it to be Demari Alston, who will get the starts, but where do you go from there? And does Auburn decide to run the ball a little bit more with a good running back room and what you hope is to be an improved offensive line that has to be better in pass pro, Mike? Because if they're not, doesn't matter who plays quarterback for Auburn, they are going to struggle. And then defensively, you're losing some big names there and you got to replace them. But I'm excited for the secondary, man. You've got so many of those young puppies that Hugh Freeze called them a year ago, and now they're in their second and third years. They could be one of the best units on Auburn's team and possibly one of the best units in the SEC.
Jacob, you and I have both sat in these press conferences and asked Hugh Freeze about play calling. I think you maybe had the funniest moment of any press conference all year last year when Mr. Hugh Freeze. But look, it feels like this dance that we've been doing with play calling has not worked. And I expect what we'll see, or we hope to see, is a unified play calling system where either the head coach takes full responsibility for all the play calling or somebody else does. Chances, before we move on, that Hugh Freeze either turns over play calling completely or owns it 100%.
I just think you're looking for clarity, right? I mean, the fans are looking for clarity. The media, we're looking for clarity. It's like, and it's crappy as it is to say, you're looking for somebody to blame when things go wrong, but you also are looking for somebody to praise if things do go right. And you just have to find who that's going to be. So will it be Hugh Freeze 100% or will he 100% turn it over? He admitted to us several times a year ago how difficult it was for him to start the season by not having play calling duties. And then ultimately he had his hand in that cookie jar in some way, shape, or form. He would tell us that, you know, the guys would game plan and then they would walk him through it and he'd make his tweaks and adjustments before game day and things like that. But my question is, in the game, in the heat of the moment, when you need a play call, who makes that call? Is it the offensive staff or is it Hugh Freeze? Who has the last final say? My guess is probably the head coach, who has a history of great offensive game planning and offensive play calling. And so I think if they start this year with Hugh Freeze with play calling or having any sort of input on that, and it doesn't start out well, For him to save his job, I think you come out publicly. You say, I'm no longer employing plays. I'm no longer a part of the game plan. They simply do their thing, and I'm here to manage in-game and manage the week and do whatever. If it comes to that, you hope that he will, if that's what it takes to save his job. But I still believe Hugh Freeze can do something on offense. I just don't think he can have the success that he had 10 and 15 years ago.
Yeah, agreed. Look, I think the word here is accountability. You're looking for accountability for what fans are seeing on Saturdays. I don't think the record was equivalent to the talent that they had. And certainly Auburn had enough talent to win more games that they won. But look, you know who is winning games is Auburn basketball. And we're going to talk about the successes they're having on the hardwood right after a quick words from our friends at the Rogue Shop. Guys, visit rogueshop.com and use code Rapport to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Our guy Richard, longtime sponsor of the War Report. We appreciate you guys for visiting him. Also, if the Rogue Shop gives you the munchies, visit our friends at Los Amigos Mexican restaurant. You can find them at 1220 Fox Run Ave, Suite 200 in Opelika, Alabama. Los Amigos, great partners in the community, 100 on that health score. So, like, yeah, when you go in there, it's a clean place to eat. But also, great place to watch the game. TVs everywhere, great food, great service. Los Amigos restaurant. And last but not least, our friends at Manscaped. Visit manscaped.com and use code Rapport to join over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with their personal grooming and care. Whether it's the boys downstairs or what you got going on the chin, Jacob, Manscaped has a product that has you covered. Again, manscaped.com. Use code Rapport to get 20% off plus free shipping. Auburn basketball. I'm there. You're there. You cover another basketball team as well over at Locked On Hoosiers. Auburn just recently garnered the #1 ranking in the country, not only in the net, but in the AP. And then they lose Janai Broom. And then they come out on yesterday and they look every bit still of the #1 team in the country. What do you think? What thoughts on this Auburn basketball team? This is the best team I think we've seen on the Plains.
Yeah, no Broom, no problem, at least against Mississippi State. I don't want that to be the narrative moving forward and say that this Auburn team doesn't need Janai Broom, but it looked that way against Mississippi State on Tuesday night, a game that I was worried about, Mike, and I think a lot of Auburn fans were too, just because of what Mississippi State had done up to this point. They ran with Kentucky. They've got big wins. They are a really, really talented team, and I think Auburn did something to them that nobody else has done. They just shut them down.
Yeah, he 20-pieced them.
Nobody's done that yet to that team. And I would be willing to bet that most teams in the SEC don't drop a 20-piece and don't beat them by that many in the SEC. Now, it was on the road for Mississippi State and probably the best environment in college basketball, but still, 20 points, to win by 20 points in the way that Auburn did it, that's dominance. That's not luck. That wasn't getting hot. Auburn beat them by 20 points, and they did it all over the floor. Guys like Miles Kelly and Denver Jones being more aggressive with the basketball, taking more shots and making more shots. Chaney Johnson channeling his inner retro Chaney Johnson is what I call him on my show, where you know it's in there, and when you need it, he's got it, but you don't always need it if Janai Broom and Dylan and those guys are doing their thing. And so, yeah, everybody stepped up and played their role, did their job, and Auburn wins a basketball game over a top 15 team without the National Player of the Year frontrunner, and they do it by 20 points. And you take a lot of momentum on the road to Georgia this weekend. I think a scary place to play, a team that's playing well in the Dogs. But, yeah, you looked really, really good if you're Auburn on Tuesday night. And very minimal complaints from me, Mike. I don't know about you.
Well, I'll tell you what. Chaney Johnson and Chad Baker-Mazara combined for 15 for 22 from the field.
Huge.
Those two and 37 combined points. On our show on Sunday, we talked about who needs to step up in Janai Broom's absence, and it was Chad Baker-Mazara and Chaney Johnson. They scored the first 2 buckets of the ball game, and they were Auburn's leading scorers throughout. However, they weren't alone. They didn't carry the load alone, and I think that's the beauty of this roster that Bruce Pearl has constructed. Is Miles Kelly said early in the season, I think you were there, we were in a post game, and he said, you never know who's going to be the guy that can go for 25 to 30 on this team. And while nobody went for more than 20 points last night. You had five players in double digits last night. Todd Pettiford, 5 for 11 for 12 points. Miles Kelly, 4 for 8, 13 points. Denver Jones, 3 for 8, 13 points, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. Auburn had a monster 10 blocks last night, 11 steals, only 10 turnovers. They dominated on rebounding. It was a complete dominant performance against the number 15 team in the nation. I want to close this segment talking about holding on to that number 1 ranking. It feels like the last time the Tigers were here, they lost immediately and they fell off that number 1 ranking as soon as they got it. That was Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith. I think they've done enough, Jacob, in the non-conference with 6-1 in quad 1 games before you got to conference play to hold on to that number 1 ranking. The committee has shown us year after year that they, unless you're not going to qualify for the tournament and you win your conference tournament, it doesn't really matter if you make a run in the tournament. You are what you are as far as seeding in the NCAA tournament going into your conference tournament. Right now, Auburn is a 1 seed. I don't think it's questionable, and I think it's going to take a lot to knock them off that perch down the stretch. If they finish a 4-loss team or even a 5-loss team on the season, I think they've done enough in the non-conference to be considered a 1 seed. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like your number 1 AP poll ranking, that's going to fluctuate. And I think Auburn fans need to realize that because there's a really high chance that Auburn's going to lose an SEC game 2, 3, or maybe even 4 this season. So don't get hung up. As awesome as it is to be the number 1 ranked team in the country, and we're going to celebrate that as long as we can, second time ever in program history, that's going to change. And it could be, you could be number 1 several different times in the next, month and a half or so, 2 months that we're going to be playing SEC basketball. But as of a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, I think Auburn to this point has done more than enough to be a number 1 seed. And I'm with you. You could drop several games in the SEC because there are no bad losses. As of right now, South Carolina would be maybe the only not good loss, but everywhere else, it's a quad 1 game, whether it be Missouri or Georgia, or you're playing the upper echelon of Kentucky and Tennessee. There are no bad teams, which means there's no bad losses. So as long as you don't just get hammered, right, in your own gym or anything like that, then you're going to be okay. And so I think Auburn will be a 1 seed. Now, if we start talking them losing 7, 8, 9 games, then you'll probably get bumped down to a 2 or a 3. But if this team keeps playing the way they are and Janai Broom can come back 100% healthy, the ankle's tricky, man. Those are easy injuries to re-injure. Yeah. If Auburn comes back healthy with Janai Broom and they're playing their best basketball in March, watch out. This team's a national championship contender, no doubt.
Absolutely. I'd be remiss if I did not mention Alabama falling to Ole Miss last night.
There you go.
At least somebody knows how to beat a Mississippi school here in the state of Alabama. Jacob, I want to thank you for joining me today. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to this visit with you. You can listen to On the Line on ESPN 106.7. It's the Auburn Opelika ESPN affiliate. You can check that out locally or online at ESPNAU.com. Go live 2 to 4 each and every day. We got 7 straight hours of local content, so be sure to check that out.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the World War. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your sports talk time. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, Corey.